Okay.
So, Paul, you're from the real democracy movement. Now, I've known you since 2005 when you were a part of a World to Win, which kind of merged into the real democracy movement. And I remember back in 2007, you actually predicted the financial crisis. Um, what's changed since then in financial, in the banking system? Has anything changed, or is it still going to be? Is there still another one coming along?
Well, yes, I remember in 2007, Jerry Gold, who is a collaborator of mine, and myself, we produced this book called A House of Cards. And I think that was the final straw for the banking system, the publication of the book, because it collapsed not very long afterwards. So what we had, Jerry and I had studied the contradictions within, this globalized capitalist system. And it was well reported in the financial press that there was a huge amount of debt and recycling of debt and invention of new debt sort of vehicles, they called them, to keep the system going, to help people to get mortgages, to help them to buy goods as consumers and so on. And it was clear that this couldn't go on forever. Although we were told at the time by the Blair government and by people like Ed Balls and Gordon Brown, there was a new paradigm. Capitalism had got over its crises. It was now trickled down. Everybody will get rich. This couldn't happen again. Just as they were saying that, bang, it went. So you asked whether much has changed since 2007, 8.
Yeah.
In essence, no. There is now another big debt mountain, which has been fueled by quantitative easing. And so there's a same kind of debt levels, corporate debt levels, government debt levels, and particularly personal debt levels, especially in the United Kingdom, which are as high as they were then in terms of percentages. So I think the warnings from the Bank for International Settlements, from the International Monetary Fund about another potential financial crash are very real. So I would say that, and as the economy has not been able to resume its kind of high growth that it existed before the crash, I would say that the potential for another crash is very real, and also the consequences will be, one has to say, probably more devastating than before.
So we've got a corporate banking system that is perpetually in crisis. But let's talk about real democracy movement now.
Okay.
It's really it's been set up because our democracy is in crisis. Could you talk to me about what the real democracy movement is for?
Yeah, it's been set up in 2 or 3 years ago. It's not a party. It's a group of supporters, registered supporters. It's not yet big enough to become anything more than that. We're looking to develop it as a movement in a very horizontal, democratic, transparent sort of fashion. So it doesn't have committees that decide policies. We try to come towards policies through debate and consensus. So I think it exists because many of us, all of us in the RDM, feel that we can't make any more progress on the major issues of the day so long as we have this very deficient democratic deficit or democratic system, which is inadequate and is not working. So our view is that we need to remake democracy, and that's what the real democracy movement, that's its aim. We want to create the momentum, with a small m perhaps, to remake democracy.
And is this people's assemblies or what? How are you thinking about going about this?
Well, what I think we have to do is obviously involve people in discussing what's wrong with the existing political system, its inadequacies, its failures, and then to involve people in the discussion about, okay, that's good. What are the alternatives? Are you talking about abolishing Parliament? Are you talking about, anarchy? What are you talking about? I think this is the discussion that needs to be had. I think the ground for doing this is very fertile, because whatever your view about the referendum on Brexit, what it was a massive rejection, the vote to leave, of the status quo, a lack of trust in what they were being told by leaders of all the political parties, a lack of trust in the European Union and its institutions. So here was a massive wasn't an overwhelming vote, but it was 17 and odd million people said, we don't like what's going on, and we don't like this way the system works. It doesn't work for us. They didn't have an alternative, and they haven't, it was more of a negative vote. But in other words, there's massive dissatisfaction, even amongst those who voted to remain, with the way things work, the lack of power that people have, the lack of control over their communities, the fact that fracking is sent down to them from Westminster. You can't oppose it. The local councils can't oppose it. It's all pretty much centralized. So, yeah, I think assemblies, series of assemblies around the country in different communities, working with each other and discussing what it is that needs to happen for people to actually have some power over their own lives. Is it adequate just to send representatives to Westminster, or do we need a more developed democracy? So that's what I think we are engaging people in that discussion wherever we meet.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about Caroline Lucas's proposal of a citizens' assembly to sort out Brexit, which I know some fairly high-profile people are backing, such as Damon Albarn, the singer-songwriter? What do you think about that idea?
Well, I think the idea of assemblies and citizens' assemblies discussing, debating big issues is good. I think people behind this particular initiative are not necessarily coming clean about their own agenda, because if you're going to have an independent assembly, then it really ought to be independent. It can't be set up by people who perhaps see this as a way of getting Brexit called off. Now, whether you think it should be called off or not is another question. But I know Caroline Lucas and the Green Party are opposed to leaving the EU. And it's also true that the Parliament is now deadlocked. So I think so long as it's allowed to have its own course, I think it's an admission that Parliament's not working, which is correct. And it's about involving people. But then it also has to have some power to get its deliberations accepted. Now that's what's missing. You can have an assembly, it could talk about this, and it sends its results to Westminster, where they may just end up in some dustbin. So their proposal begs the question, if Parliament's not working, what is an alternative, comprehensive alternative to this setup at Westminster, which is democratic? Because there are people on the far right who also think Parliament's not working, but their solution would be some kind of autocratic dictatorship. So I think it's for people on the left to come up to get involved in this discussion. And unfortunately, too many people on the left think democracy is, it's not for us to talk about. But if there is any kind of democracy in this country, it's because people themselves fought for it, not the Tories. It's fought for by people down the centuries. So it's up to us to take this debate on and to develop it. So I think Lucas's proposal, Damon Albarn's proposal, it's good so far as it goes, but it needs to be taken further.
So how is the Real Democracy Movement taking things further?
Well, we produced some publications. We produced a publication about neoliberalism, which tries to put neoliberalism in its context to show its connection with corporate power and its connections with the decline of democracy. We've had debates on that, organized meetings around that in different parts of the country, where as a major event taking place in South Shields, in a joint meeting with the South Tyneside Momentum, where we're discussing these very things. So I think that what we're trying to do is to get the debate out there and to involve people in the debate. So all our activities are designed towards not telling people what we think, but providing the materials for debate, discussion, development of policy proposals, and to put this question of democracy, remaking democracy, on the agenda, because it's not on the agenda of many, many meetings. So that's our role, I think. And we do work on Facebook, social media. We do, we try and convey our message through Twitter, on our account, which is at Democracy OK. And we're open to debate and discussion. I think that's the way to go, and collaboration.
And what's your website, Paul?
That's therealdemocracymovement.org. You can find some stuff there. You can take part in the debate. If you register as a supporter, you can publish your own blogs and develop your own material and start a debate of your own. So go there, register as a supporter. It doesn't cost anything at this point to do that. It's free, but it gives you access to publishing stuff and being part of a planning group, if you want to be, of developing these ideas.
And when is the South Shields event?
The 23rd of February. And it's proving very popular. I think we're running out of space, but if you want to go, you can go look it up on Eventbrite. Just type in South Shields or South Tyneside, February 23. It'll lead you to the page.
All right, Paul. Thank you very much.
All right, Dylan. Been a pleasure.